The Hopeful Pastor Podcast.
Let me ask you a hard question. Have you ever had a moment where you thought, I can't do this anymore? I'm not talking about a bad Sunday or a hard counseling session. I'm talking about that deep, gnawing sense that the fire has gone out, that you're just surviving week to week, Sunday to Sunday, and no matter how much coffee you drink or how long you prep or how well your church is doing on paper, something still feels off. That, my friend, is often what burnout feels like in ministry. And if you're tuning in today, there's a decent chance that something inside of you already knows that. You may not be fully burned out, but you're already feeling the heat. Today, we're talking about how burnout doesn't usually arrive with a crash. It creeps in. Let's dive in.
Helping pastors and ministry leaders refresh, renew, and restore with honest conversations, faith-filled truth, and practical insights. It's the Hopeful Pastor Podcast with your host, Pastor Zach Gammon.
So, first, let's define what we're talking about when we say burnout. Burnout isn't just feeling tired. Burnout is emotional, spiritual, and physical exhaustion caused by prolonged stress, unrelenting pressure, and unrealistic expectations, both from others and from yourself. And in ministry, that's a perfect storm, right? We've got all three: stress, pressure, and expectation. There's the stress from constant crisis management, the pressure to always be on, always available, always compassionate. There's expectation from church members and staff and deacons, for some of you, your denomination, and then even your own internal guilt, right? And then on top of that, there's just the regular things that we all deal with in our personal lives, our families, home lives, all the things that go on. Burnout is when you're running on fumes and pretending the tank is still full. And here's the problem. Pastors don't just get tired. We usually feel guilty for being tired. And it still just sounds ridiculous even saying that out loud, right? But what that results in is that we don't stop. We end up pushing harder. We call it sacrifice, right? We spiritualize our exhaustion. But here's the thing. God never asked you to burn out for Him. He just asked you to be faithful. So then you might be wondering, how did I get here? Why didn't I notice this sooner? Well, you're in good company there, my friend. That's the thing about burnout. It's sneaky. It doesn't announce itself with flashing lights. It shows up in small compromises. You skip your personal devotion time again. You dread phone calls because you assume it's bad news. You start counting how many Sundays until your next guest speaker or another pastor on your team fills in. And here's a huge reason pastors miss the signs. We're used to giving care, but we're not very good at receiving it. We're trained to listen to others' pain, but when it comes to our own, we often dismiss it. We tell ourselves, well, I'm fine. We confuse coping with healing, and they're not the same. You can keep functioning while you're falling apart, and in ministry, that happens more than we'd like to admit. And frankly, it's rewarded and celebrated. So here are the creeping signs you might miss. Let's break down a few real-life warning signs that might be inching you toward burnout. Number one, you start envying people who don't work in ministry. If you've ever watched somebody work at a bank or in retail and thought, I bet they don't cry in the car after work, that might be a clue for you. Number two, you become hypersensitive to criticism. A slightly snarky comment in the lobby ruins your whole week. That's not immaturity, Pastor. It's a soul that's fraying. Number 3, you feel emotionally numb. You're not angry, but you're not joyful either. In the therapy world, we call that being flat. You're going through the motions and you've convinced yourself that's normal, but it's not. Number 4, you procrastinate things you used to love. You used to love sermon prep, and now you stare at a blank page or a flashing cursor. You used to get excited about meetings, and now you hope people cancel. Your humor has turned cynical, and what once made you lighthearted now just feels jaded. Sarcasm replaces hope. Resentment replaces grace. But we've got to understand some differences here. There's an important note to make. All fatigue is not burnout. All right? There is a difference in burnout and depression and even just seasonal fatigue. Some of what you're experiencing right now in this moment might be seasonal fatigue, like post-Easter exhaustion. Then there's also mild depression, which is not as serious as what the professionals call major depressive disorder, but it can overlap with burnout, and it can turn into burnout if you don't take care of it. There's also spiritual dryness, a lack of connection with God. Here's a little diagnostic tip for you. If rest helps, it's probably fatigue. If rest doesn't help, it might be burnout. If nothing helps, it's worth talking to a mental health professional. That's not weakness or lack of faith. That's going to a trusted person who can walk with you and who can offer support. You're not weak for asking for help. You're wise. And there's a big difference. So here are some common roots of burnout. And let's talk about what drives burnout at its very core. Number 1, unrealistic expectations. You're expected to be counselor, preacher, CEO, HR, janitor, and spiritual guru all at once. That's exhausting. It's not sustainable, and you were never meant to do it all. There are churches out there who have large staffs who make this look just simple and easy. There are small churches who do this really well with some fantastic volunteers and deacons and ministry leaders. Church size and attendance doesn't define the ability to have these things managed well. Number 2, poor boundaries. If you feel like you're guilty or you feel like you failed when you take a day off, that's a boundary issue. If your phone rings during dinner and you immediately answer, even when it could wait, that, my friend, is a boundary issue. And the person that you're sacrificing for to answer that phone call, they may not remember it 6 months from now, but your spouse probably will. Number 3, the savior complex. You're not Jesus, but when you act like everybody's spiritual life depends solely on you, that is a fast track to burnout. You carry a weight you were never meant to carry. Number 4, loneliness. Ministry can feel isolating, especially if you've been burned before. And when that happens, you may not let anybody close, but isolation always amplifies burnout. So then here's what to do next if you're seeing the signs. What now? Let me offer 3 things I believe every weary pastor needs. All right? Number 1, you need permission to slow down. You don't need a crisis to rest. You don't need to get permission from a board. If God rested on the 7th day, so can you. Number 2, a plan for recovery. That's not just taking a nap, although certainly I encourage you to, but you need a real plan. Counseling, coaching, sabbatical conversations. Resources like my free refresh program or the renew program if you need a deeper reset. All of those things should be considered when you're exploring what it means to truly find restoration. Number 3, you need people who understand. You need somebody who gets in your corner, who understands what you're going through, who's walked through it. Don't wait for somebody to notice you're struggling, because as it is, they're probably not going to realize it. You have to be the one to reach out. Let me end with this thought. Burnout doesn't disqualify you. Burnout doesn't define you. And burnout doesn't mean that God is done with you. You're not failing. You're human. You're not lazy. You're tired. And you're not alone. Not now, and not ever. Jesus is still walking with you, even when you're limping. So take the right step. The next step, not for your church, not for your calling, but for your soul. Find hope in that today, Pastor.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Hopeful Pastor Podcast. If you were encouraged by this episode, please be sure to rate, subscribe, and connect with us online at hopefulpastor.com. Let's press on in hope together. See you next time.